everyone. I'm Christy from the Patrick Lucero branch. Thanks for tuning into Charlotte's Web. So, for everybody who's been reading along with us, we are starting on chapter 16 this week. And Wilbur just found out that Charlotte is going to have babies. And because Charlotte is trying to save Wilbur from being the Christmas dinner, she's been weaving words into her web about Wilbur. So Wilbur is become famous and people are super excited. So Wilbur is headed off to the fair. So, and that is the name of the next chapter, Off to the Fair. And I would like to thank Harper Collins for allowing us to read Charlotte's Web. So let's get started. Off to the fair. The night before the county fair, everybody went to bed early. Fern and Avery were in bed by 8. Avery lay dreaming that the Ferris wheel had stopped and that he was in the top car. Fern lay dreaming that she was getting sick in the swings. Lurvy was in bed by 8:30. He lay dreaming that he was throwing baseballs at a cloth cat and winning a genuine Navajo blanket. Mr. and Mrs. Zuckerman were in bed by 9. Mrs. Zuckerman lay dreaming about a deep freeze unit. Mr. Zuckerman lay dreaming about Wilbur. He dreamt that Wilbur had grown until he was 116 feet long and 92 feet high, and that he had won all the prizes at the fair and was covered with blue ribbons. And you can see giant Wilbur there in the dream. Down in the barn cellar, the animals too went to sleep early, all except Charlotte. Tomorrow would be fair day. Every creature planned to get up early to see Wilbur off on his great adventure. When morning came, everybody got up at daylight. The day was hot, and up the road at the Arabelle's house, Fern lugged a pail of hot water to her room and took a sponge bath. Then she put on her prettiest dress because she knew she would see boys at the fair. Mrs. Arabelle scrubbed the back of Avery's neck and wet his hair and parted it and brushed it down hard till it stuck to the top of his head. All but about 6 hairs that stood straight up. Avery put on clean underwear, clean blue jeans, and a clean shirt. Mr. Arabelle dressed, ate breakfast, and then went out and polished his truck. He had offered to drive everybody to the fair, including Wilbur. Bright and early, Lurvy put clean straw in Wilbur's crate and lifted it into the pig pen. The crate was green, and in gold letters it said, Zuckerman's famous pig. Charlotte had her web looking fine for the occasion. Wilbur ate his breakfast slowly. He tried to look radiant without getting food in his ears. In the kitchen, Mrs. Zuckerman suddenly made an announcement. Homer, she said to her husband, I'm going to give that pig a buttermilk bath. What? Said Mr. Zuckerman. A buttermilk bath. My grandmother used to bathe her pig with buttermilk when it got dirty. I just remembered. Well, Wilbur's not dirty, said Mr. Zuckerman proudly. He's filthy behind the ears, said Mrs. Zuckerman. Every time Lurvy slops him, the food runs down around the ears. Then it dries and forms a crust. He also has a smudge on one side where he lays in the manure. He lays in clean straw, corrected Mr. Zuckerman. Well, he's dirty and he's going to have a bath. Mr. Zuckerman sat down weakly and ate a donut. His wife went to the woodshed. When she returned, she wore rubber boots and an old raincoat, and she carried a bucket of buttermilk and a small wooden paddle. Edith, you're crazy, mumbled Zuckerman, but she paid no attention to him. Together they walked to the pig pen. Mrs. Zuckerman wasted no time. She climbed in with Wilbur and went to work. Dipping her paddle in the buttermilk, she rubbed him all over. The geese gathered around to see the fun, and so did the sheep and the lambs. Even Templeton poked his head out cautiously to watch Wilbur get a buttermilk bath. Charlotte got so interested she lowered herself on a dragline so she could see better. Wilbur stood still and closed his eyes. He could feel the buttermilk trickling down his sides. He opened his mouth and some buttermilk ran in. It was delicious. He felt radiant and happy. When Mrs. Zuckerman got through and rubbed him dry, he was the cleanest, prettiest pig you ever saw. And you can see Wilbur and you can see Charlotte on her drag line there watching Wilbur get his buttermilk bath. He was pure white, pink around the ears and snout, and smooth as silk. The Zuckermans went up to change into their best clothes. Lurvy went to shave and put on his plaid shirt and his purple necktie. The animals were left to themselves in the barn. The seven goslings paraded around and around their mother. Please, please, please take us to the fair, begged a gosling. Then all seven began teasing to go. Oh, please, 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 please. They made quite a racket. Children, snapped the goose, we're staying quiet. I'll leave home. Only Wilbur is going to the fair. Just then Charlotte interrupted. I shall go too, she said softly. I have decided to go with Wilbur. He may need me. We can't tell what may happen at the fairgrounds. Somebody's got to go along who knows how to write. And I think Templeton better come too. I might need somebody to run errands and do general work. I'm staying right here, grumbled the rat. I haven't the slightest interest in fairs. Well, that's because you've never been to one, remarked the old sheep. A fair is a rat's paradise. Everybody spills food at a fair. A rat can creep out late at night and have a feast. In the horse barn, you'll find oats that the trotters and pacers have spilled. In the trampled grass of the infield, you'll find old discarded lunch boxes containing the foul remains of peanut butter sandwiches, hard-boiled eggs, cracker crumbs, bits of donuts, and particles of cheese. In the hard-packed dirt of the midway, after the glaring lights are out and the people have gone home to bed, you'll find a veritable treasure of popcorn fragments, frozen custard drippings, candied apples abandoned by tired children, sugar fluff crystals, salted almonds, popsicles, partially gnawed ice cream cones, and the wooden sticks of lollipops. Everywhere is loot for a rat. In tents, in booths, and haylofts, why, a fair has enough disgusting leftover food to satisfy a whole army of rats. Templeton's eyes were blazing. Is this true? He asked. Is this appetizing yarn of yours true? I like high living, and what you say tempts me. It is true, said the old sheep. Go to the fair, Templeton. You'll find that the conditions at a fair will surpass your wildest dreams. Buckets with sour mash sticking to them, tin cans containing particles of tuna fish, greasy paper bags stuffed with rotten. That's enough, cried Templeton. Don't tell me any more. I'm going. Good, said Charlotte, winking at the old sheep. Now then, there is no time to be lost. Wilbur will soon be put into the crate. Templeton and I must get in the crate right now and hide ourselves. The rat didn't waste a minute. He scampered over to the crate, crawled between the slats, and pulled straw up over him so he was hidden from sight. All right, said Charlotte, I'm next. She sailed into the air, let out a drag line, and dropped gently to the ground. Then she climbed the side of the crate and hid herself into a knot hole in the top board. The old sheep nodded. What a cargo, she said. That sign ought to say Zuckerman's famous pig and 2 stowaways. Look out, the people are coming, shouted the gander. Cheese it, cheese it, cheese it. The big truck with Mr. Arabelle at the wheel backed slowly down toward the barnyard. Lurvy and Mr. Zuckerman walked alongside. Fern and Avery were standing in the body of the truck, hanging onto the sideboards. Listen to me, whispered the old sheep to Wilbur. When they open the crate and try to put you in, struggle. Don't go without a tussle. Pigs always resist when they're being loaded. If I struggle, I'll get dirty, said Wilbur. Never mind that. Do as I say. Struggle. If you were to walk into that crate without resisting, Zuckerman might think you were bewitched. He'd be scared to go to the fair. Templeton poked his head up through the straw. Struggle if you must, said he, but kindly remember that I'm hiding down here in this crate, and I don't want to be stepped on, or kicked in the face, or pummeled, or crushed in any way, or squashed, or buffeted about, or bruised, or lacerated, or scarred, or biffed. Just watch what you're doing, Mr. Radiant, when they get you shoving in. Be quiet, Templeton, said the sheep. Pull in your head. They're coming. Look radiant, Wilbur. Lay low, Charlotte. Talk it up, geese. The truck backed slowly to the pigpen and stopped. Mr. Arabelle cut the motor, got out, walked around to the rear, and lowered the tailgate. The geese cheered, and Mrs. Arabelle got out of the truck. Fern and Avery jumped to the ground. Mrs. Zuckerman came walking down from the house. Everybody lined up at the fence and stood for a moment, admiring Wilbur and the beautiful green crate. Nobody realized that the crate already contained a rat and a spider. That's some pig, said Mrs. Arabelle. He's so terrific, said Lurvy. Oh, he's very radiant, said Fern, remembering the day he was born. Well, said Mr. Zuckerman, he's clean anyway. The buttermilk certainly helped. Mr. Arabelle studied Wilbur carefully. Yes, he's a wonderful pig, he said. It's hard to believe that he was the runt of the litter. You'll get some extra good ham and bacon, Homer, when it comes time to kill that pig. Wilbur heard those words, and his heart almost stopped. I think I'm going to faint, he whispered to the old sheep who was watching. Kneel down, whispered the old sheep. Let the blood rush to your head. Wilbur sank to his knees, all radiance gone, his eyes closed. Look, screamed Fern, he's fading away. Hey, watch me, yelled Avery, crawling on all fours into the crate. I'm a pig! I'm a pig! Avery's foot touched Templeton under the straw. Oh, what a mess, thought the rat. What fantastic creatures boys are. Why did I let myself in for this? The geese saw Avery in the crate and cheered. Avery, you get out of that crate this instant, commanded his mother. What do you think you are? I'm a pig, cried Avery. Oink, oink, oink. The truck is rolling away, Papa, said Fern. The truck, with no one at the wheel, had started to roll downhill. Mr. Arabelle dashed to the driver's seat and pulled on the emergency brake. The truck stopped, and the geese cheered. Charlotte crouched and made herself as small as possible in the knothole so Avery wouldn't see her. Come out at once, cried Mrs. Arabelle. Avery crawled out of the crate on his hands and knees, making faces at Wilbur. Oh, and Wilbur fainted away. The pig has passed out, said Mrs. Zuckerman. Throw water on him. Throw buttermilk, suggested Avery. The geese cheered. Lurvy ran for a pail of water. Fern climbed into the pen and knelt by Wilbur's side. It's sunstroke, said Zuckerman. The heat is too much for him. Well, maybe he's dead, said Avery. Come out of that pig pen immediately, cried Mrs. Arabelle. Avery obeyed his mother and climbed into the back of the truck so he could see better. Lurvy returned with cold water and dashed it on Wilbur. Throw some on me, cried Avery. I'm hot too. Oh, keep quiet, hollered Fern. Keep quiet. Her eyes were brimming with tears. Wilbur, feeling the cold water, came too. He rose slowly to his feet while the geese cheered. He's up, said Mr. Arabelle. I guess there's nothing wrong with him. I'm hungry, said Avery. I want a candied apple. Wilbur's all right now, said Fern. We can start. I want to ride on the Ferris wheel. Mr. Zuckerman and Mr. Arabelle and Lurvy grabbed the pig and pushed him headfirst toward the crate. Wilbur began to struggle, and the harder the men pushed, the harder he held back. Avery jumped up and joined the men. Wilbur kicked and thrashed and grunted. Nothing wrong with this pig, said Mr. Zuckerman cheerfully, pressing his knee against Wilbur's behind. All together now, boys, shove! With a heavy final heave, they jammed him into the crate, and the geese cheered. Lurvy nailed some boards across the end so Wilbur couldn't back out. Then, using all their strength, the men picked up the crate and heaved it aboard the truck. They did not know that under the straw was a rat, and inside a knothole was a big gray spider. They saw only a pig. Everybody in, called Mr. Arabelle. He started the motor. The ladies climbed in beside him. Mr. Zuckerman and Lurvy and Fern and Avery rode him back, hanging onto the sideboard. The truck began to move ahead, and the geese cheered. The children answered their cheer, and away everybody went to the fair. Chapter 17, Uncle. When they pulled into the fairgrounds, they could hear music and see the Ferris wheel turning in the sky. They could smell the dust of the racetrack where the sprinkling cart had moistened it, and they could smell hamburgers frying and see balloons aloft. They could hear sheep blathering in their pens. An enormous voice over the loudspeaker said, "Attention, please. Will the owner of a Pontiac car, license number H2439, please move your car away from the fireworks shed?" Can I have some money, asked Fern. Can I too, asked Avery. I'm going to win a doll by spinning the wheel, and it will stop on the right number, said Fern. I'm going to steer a jet plane and make it bump into another one. Can I have a balloon? Asked Fern. Can I have a frozen custard and a cheeseburger and some raspberry soda pop? Asked Avery. You children be quiet till we get this pig unloaded, said Mrs. Arabelle. Let's let the children go off by themselves, suggested Mr. Arabelle. The fair only comes once a year. Mr. Arabelle gave Fern 2 quarters and 2 dimes, and he gave Avery 5 dimes and 4 nickels. Now run along, he said, and remember, the money has to last all day. Don't spend it all the first few minutes. And be back here at the truck at noon time so we can all have lunch together. And don't eat a lot of stuff that's going to make you sick to your stomachs. And if you go in those swings, said Mrs. Arabelle, you hang on tight. You hang on very tight. Hear me? And don't get lost, said Mrs. Zuckerman. And don't get dirty. And don't get overheated, said their mother. Watch out for pickpockets, cautioned their father. And don't cross a racetrack when the horses are coming, cried Mrs. Zuckerman. The children grabbed each other by the hand and danced off in the direction of the merry-go-round, toward the wonderful music and the wonderful adventure and the wonderful excitement, into the wonderful midway where there would be no parents to guard them and guide them, and where they could be happy and free to do as they pleased. Mrs. Arabelle stood quietly and watched them go. Then she sighed. Then she blew her nose. Do you really think it's all right? She asked. Well, they've got to grow up sometime, said Mr. Arabelle, and a fair is a good place to start, I guess. There's the picture. They're off to the fairgrounds. See the Ferris wheel there? While Wilbur was being unloaded and taken out of his crate into its new pig pen, crowds gathered to watch. They stared at the sign, Zuckerman's famous pig. And Wilbur stared back and tried to look extra good. He was pleased with his new home, and the pen was grassy, and it was shaded from the sun by a shed roof. Templeton, not wishing to come out in broad daylight, stayed quietly under the straw at the bottom of the crate. Mr. Zuckerman poured some skim into Wilbur's straw. He pitched clean straw into his pen, and then he and Mrs. Zuckerman and the Arabelles walked away toward the cow barn to look at purebred cows and to see the sights. As soon as Charlotte came out of her crate, she spoke to Wilbur. It's a good thing you can't see what I see, she said. Well, what do you see? Asked Wilbur. There's a pig in the next pen, and he's enormous. I'm afraid he's much bigger than you are. Well, maybe he's older than I am, and has had more time to grow, suggested Wilbur, and tears began to come to his eyes. I'll drop down and have a closer look, Charlotte said. Then she crawled along a beam till she was directly over the next pen. She let herself down on a drag line until she hung in the air just in front of the big pig's snout. May I have your name? She asked politely. The pig stared at her. No name, he said in a big, hearty voice. Just call me Uncle. Oh, very well, Uncle, replied Charlotte. What's the date of your birth? Are you a spring pig? Sure, I'm a spring pig, replied Uncle. What did you think? I was a spring chicken? Ha ha. That's a good one, eh, sister? Mildly funny, said Charlotte. I've heard funnier ones, though. Glad to have met you, and now I must be going. She ascended slowly and returned to Wilbur's pen. He claims he's a spring pig, reported Charlotte. Perhaps he is. One thing is certain, he has a most unattractive personality. He's too familiar, too noisy, and cracks weak jokes. Also, he's not anywhere near as clean as you are, nor as pleasant. I took quite a dislike to him in our briefing review. He's going to be a hard pig to beat, though, Wilbur, on account of his size and weight. But with me helping you, it can be done. Well, when are you going to spin a web? Asked Wilbur. This afternoon, late, if I'm not too tired. Charlotte. If I'm not too tired, said Charlotte. The least thing tires me these days. I don't seem to have the energy I once had. My age, I guess. Wilbur looked at his friend, and she looked rather swollen, and she seemed listless. I'm awfully sorry to hear that you're feeling poorly, Charlotte, he said. Perhaps if you spin a web and catch a couple of flies, you'll feel better. Perhaps, she said wearily, but I feel like the end of a long day. Climbing upside down to the ceiling, she settled down for a nap, leaving Wilbur very much worried. All morning, people wandered past Wilbur's pen. Dozens and dozens of strangers stopped to stare at him and to admire his silky coat. All morning, Templeton slept quietly under the straw, and The day grew fiercely hot. Isn't it hot? Said Mrs. Zuckerman. It's terribly hot, said Mrs. Arabelle, fanning herself with an advertisement of a deep freeze. One by one they climbed into the truck and opened lunch boxes. The sun beat down on everything. Nobody seemed hungry. When are the judges going to decide about Wilbur? Said Mrs. Zuckerman. Not till tomorrow, said Mr. Zuckerman. Lurvy appeared, carrying a blanket that he had won. That's just what we need, said Avery. A blanket? Well, of course it is, replied Lurvy. And he spread the blanket across the sideboards of the truck so that it was like a little tent. The children sat in the shade under the blanket and felt much better. After lunch, they stretched out and fell asleep. Okay, we're going to end there and we'll start chapter 18, The Cool of the Evening, next week. So I hope you enjoyed Charlotte's Web today and you guys stay safe and I hope everybody's doing good in school. So until next week, we'll see you later. Bye.